You know, one thing that I love about Digital CPA is that it does come in December, and it provides us an opportunity to reflect on the year and to look ahead to 2026. Yep. And Mark, you know, this is your first year at the helm of the AICPA, and when you and I were talking about 2025, when you look back on it, this has been quite a consequential year. It's very significant in many ways. It's been very polarizing at times, but when you look at what has occurred, there's been a lot of real change. So just kind of, hitting a couple of topics, Mark, and then want you to comment on that. One, clearly a very active time in D.C. The tax legislation, the BBB bill passing in the June-July timeframe, the regulatory landscape changing dramatically. You just came back from the SEC conference from earlier today. A lot being discussed there on where regulatory, focus is going. But then you move to the economy. And in the economy here, the markets have been growing. In many ways, it's K-shaped. I mean, this huge AI investment, just adding, 1 to 2% to the GDP, which is incredible. And then technology. Michael already said it. He already put the AI word out there. The Time Person of the Year right now, the prediction markets it's going to be AI. And then the profession. You look at the profession, the investment, the dollars coming in to the firms, the capital coming into these technology companies, and just growth and opportunity, Mark. So you've been busy.
Yeah, a little busy. And as our former chair, Tim Christian, always likes to say, it's a great day to be a CPA. The opportunities abound, and we keep talking a lot about the opportunities. Even when you talk about the implementation of the tax bill, when you talk about tariffs, all of these things are ways for us to interact with our client and really have some good business conversations around it. Much like PPP, that's when I left AICPA in 2020, was right after the pandemic had started, and we started the town halls back then, and you think about how important we were, how trusted we were to our clients then. Same thing now with this tax legislation as it's coming up, tariffs, just all kinds of business opportunities, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's just kind of reflect a little bit. I mean, the first Digital CPA, last time we were here was 2018, but the original DCPA was 2012. You can learn from history. I remember back then, it was all about the rise of cloud computing. Client accounting services had really not become a defined term. There was a lot of questioning about, what is this area of business? That's all changed now. There was much more of the traditional business model present with the firms, but there was the classic concerns related to cloud computing, related to security and control. So here we are right now. It's a moment. It's a dramatic moment for the profession, for society. It's exciting, this acceleration of AI. CAS is so well established. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Lots of transformation going on in audit and tax. But we've got similar questions.
Absolutely. When you look at back where we were in 2012, and I had a couple of folks that have been around this conference for a while, and they congratulated me for taking over as CEO, and they're like, we have one of us, because you were on the CAS advisory group right when we started it back in 2012, and I was honored by that, and it was. I mean, being able to move that, looking at cloud computing back then, and people thought we were crazy. And, cloud's not going to be the advent. No one's going to get rid of their servers in their broom closet. Cloud's not going to make it, and here we are. It's a foregone conclusion now that we're going to do it. AI will get to that point, but we're in the very early stages. And I can't wait till 10 years from now, if I'm still around.
You'll be around, Mark.
We can talk then about how we've really kind of transformed from the AI space as well. So great opportunity.
But Mark, what it really is all about, when you look at the cloud and you look at what's happening with AI, it's the changing of the business model. And people, a couple of people ask me, hey, what's this year's Digital CPA going to be about? And you can say, it's going to be about how AI is reshaping the profession, but it's really about the people and the process. It's about the upskilling of the talent. It's about changing of the business strategies. This is not just a technology conference. We all know technology is the enabler. It's the enabler that we need to think about, But when you look at the CAS growth over the past decade plus, it's been about the leaders in the CAS areas thinking about their staffing plans, thinking about their business strategies. We'll be talking about that in more detail in a minute. But Mark, this is the core purpose of digital CPA.
It absolutely is. And taking it from not just the technology piece, like when I think about it, especially when we talk about AI today, a lot of companies that I've talked to around the world even are talking about how they need to upskill their talent into a different way of doing things. The days of how we use experiential learning as the way to grow and progress, those days are gone. And so the question is, how do we give them that knowledge faster rather than, from a new associate to get to manager is a 5 to 7 year venture. How do I get there in 5 to 7 months? Because we need these folks doing things differently. So it changes the way we're going to practice, changes our business model, changes the way we're going to hire and move forward. So all of those pieces, us staying on top of it as a community, sitting in this room, that is where we're going to drive change going forward.
Yeah, and we always thank this digital CPA community for being the leaders of the profession related to change. So Mark and I are now going to show you 3 maturity model slides, one for CAS, one for the audit area, and one for the tax area. And these when you break down these different maturity models, this is what's being discussed over the next couple of days in those 40+ sessions. When you look at CAS, it has just truly transformed. When we were talking in the early stages about financial CAS, it's moved to business insights. Today I was with the CAS Advisory Council, a very important group, and they were talking about focusing on digital transformation and having somebody in charge of the digital tech stack related to their CAS area. A lot of discussions, though, as well related to people and process. So, Mark, this is something you've been very, very close to over the past decade.
For sure, and I see it not just in the firm community, but we're also seeing it in business and industry. And again, when I was out talking we now have Engage in 4 parts of the world. We have Engage UK, Engage Asia, Engage Africa, and I was in the UK speaking there. I talked a lot about the fact that, the CFO, the CGMA, and why CGMA coming together with CPA was so important, going from the scorekeeper up into that strategic advisor. They use strategic advisor rather than trusted advisor, but it's all in the same realm. And so I think for all of us to have different ways of doing things. And then I think back of when I was in practice in Buffalo and the fact that we had our IT consulting that resold boxes of GL packages, right? You buy our box because our box is better than their box, and that was the way we did it. And watching firms now, larger firms bringing CAS, VAR, and CFO advisory all together under one umbrella because that's the right strategic solution. I can't go in and just go and try and sell something to a client. I need to listen to the client, and I need to do solution selling based on where they're going to be, and it brings all 3 of those pieces together.
Absolutely. I think I could see next year at Digital CPA, it's advisory, tax, and audit. The centralization of those 3 areas, the client accounting services, the consulting VAR, and CFO advisory, it's happening at firms of all sizes.
Absolutely. I've even talked to the person that was running our department way back when, and he had to move from that box into providing some semblance of solutioning for the client and then going out and picking the right piece. It's almost like being a financial advisor, but for the tech space and all of that, and then figuring out, evaluating inside the client if they even have the capability to run it, and then if they don't, then we can move them into a CAS engagement.
So one last comment on this. We're still in the early stages of this movement. If it's baseball, it's the 3rd inning. If it's football, it's maybe still the 2nd quarter. There is so much opportunity here, and it's one of the reasons why there's so much investment coming into the firms is the growth of advisory and outsourced accounting services. So now moving on to audit. And I want to reflect back to another time we were in DC, and that was the last time we were here was 2018. We were in another AI movement at that moment. Machine learning was all the hype in 2015 to 2018 window. You had IBM Watson beating Jeopardy, and the big four at that time, all of them announced billion-dollar investments in their audit areas. And we, with the major firm group, were looking at that. And right now, the audit technology market is not stagnant, but it was actually rather stagnant back there in 2017, 2018. And the major firm group, the top 100 firms in the United States, asked the AICPA to launch an initiative to really rethink about the audit and to drive transformation. And that project is called the Dynamic Audit Solution. Mark Koziel was here. He was on the ground floor of that initiative. And we really have helped advance this whole category. I'm so excited about all the companies we have here today, and I'm also excited where we are with the DAS initiative.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an incredible place right now, and I got a little overexcited at the SEC conference today as I said that we've already launched the SEC module for DAS, and I'm a week off. It actually launches on the 17th, so pay attention to your email inbox, those who care. But it was just kind of funny how people were generally interested because they're like, wait a minute, I haven't seen it out there yet. What do we need to do? Overall, this initiative it's not an AICPA built product. It's not a CPA.com built product. It is a by the profession, for the profession product. We had a number of firms that have been involved with this. And the first question out of the gate back in 2018 is like, okay, we have a blank sheet of paper. If we were to build an audit practice today, based on all the technologies that are out there, how should we build it? And I think that was a really important concept. Rather than taking an old product or an old 3-ring binder and trying to put that up into the cloud and call it a new product, it is really about how would we do it differently if audit started today versus where it was. And so a lot of that, great growth, great, I think, support by the firms to do it. And we continue to get excited. And you know what? It's actually helped the category in general. It doesn't matter. Of course, we'd love for you to buy the DAS product, but no matter what you're on, it is about us moving the category. Audit is the one thing we as CPAs are licensed to do no matter what state we go in. That creates trust in the marketplace. Audit equals trust. Trust and audit gives us permission to do all the other things that we do. So it is a huge part of the ecosystem and one we really needed to lean in on in 2018.
Yeah, well said, Mark. I mean, people ask me about CPA.com's charter. It's to help transform practice areas. Sometimes I say move categories, and that's what we did here. Excited, there's hundreds of millions of dollars being invested here, some great solutions advancing it, and it's really, again, it's about the people and process as well as the technology solution. So what we are releasing over the next 24 hours is going to be a session tomorrow at 1 p.m. unpacking this audit transformation survey report. This is just looking at where firms are today. We've done this with the client accounting services area. We do surveys, benchmark where are firms, where are the challenges, where do we need to go. This is much broader than just technology. This is talking about the firm's audit transformation. Here are some of the key themes. There's work to be done. New metrics need to be identified. You're right, and you look at, there's a lot of good data in there, and this is going to be a journey. This is not going to happen overnight.
It's not, no, and as we think about the things that we need to focus on in audit transformation, it is not just about how we're doing the audit, but it's going to be a lot of the processes and things. If we put AI into the system now, based on how we calculate value, which, by the way, is not how clients calculate it, it's how we do it internally of, rate times hours, it'll be a race to the bottom. And we need to figure out different ways of managing our practice to make sure that we retain the value we so deserve inside the audit practice as we go forward.
So I know there's a lot of auditors here with us at Digital CPA. We'll have a big team at the booth. I do want to give a shout out to my partner here in this overall initiative, and that's Sue Coffey, and she'll be here with her team and we've got a big team at CPA.com, so definitely get a copy of that report. So let's move into an area that is just on fire. I don't know how I want to say, sea change. I like talking about the sea. What's going on in taxes, in the tax area, is quite incredible. This area has tremendous investment, and one of the whys is that Gen AI is perfectly suited for the tax research and tax prep automation. And it's dramatic. It's dramatic what is happening. And I think over the next 2 years, we're going to see how firms are doing their tax service and what companies are supporting it is going to change dramatically. We did lean in this year. We identified tax research as an area that we thought was perfect to bring a new solution to market. And that solution is called Blue Jay, and it's gone from a few hundred firms to close to 4,000 firms over the last 18 months, and they're going to have 4 million tax questions answered by the end of the year. And this is just one of the many companies. And what we're going to be doing here in 2026 is we're going to do another benchmarking report related to the tax services area, Mark. So I know this is something that the AICPA has been focused on for a long time, moving into tax advisory and tax planning.
I said this time and again back when I was here the last time in mid 2000s to 2020. I was kidded that if I ever got fired, I'd go out and start my own cash practice and tax practice.
Right.
But tax would be more about wealth management. We started wealth management at my firm when I was there, and it was just such a huge uplift for us to really own the total client relationship, right? And going from a point of cradle to grave with the client, it was such a great opportunity for the firm. I think a great opportunity still for the profession. I believe in it. We have our PFP section, we have the PFS credential, all important aspects, I think, if you're taxed, to really expand your practice beyond that. And the Blue Jay comment, I just spoke at SEC this morning. I told them the example. Now, full disclosure, I grew up as an auditor. That's the part of the practice I came in on. And so with the whole HR 1 bill this year, on August 28th, they had a RevProc ruling to help with Section 174 on R&E. That's as much tax knowledge as I generally have. But I said to Ben, who's the founder of Blue Jay, I said, do me a favor, give me access just for a day, because I want to do a little experiment. So I went in there, and this is like a week or two later from the RevProc ruling. And I went in there and I said, give me a 2-page summary on the RevProc ruling dated August 28, 2025 on Section 174. Put it in within a minute, maybe, it spits out this 2-page summary. So I sent that summary onto our tax team, and I said, tell me how accurate it is. They come back and they said, it's probably about 94% accurate. There's a couple things we would have added to it, but we would put it about 90 to 94%. I said, that's fantastic, because I averaged in the 70s in my college class in tax, so I got way smarter just by being able to use the tool. But having someone that you could trust it to a degree, but you need somebody to make that verification. Again, back to our pipeline, we're going to need to give them the tools to be able to say whether or not that's accurate. And for your practice dealing in tax, having a tool like that, you can instantaneously send on a 2-page summary, as I just mentioned, in your logo to your client days after these things pass. It gives you that much greater. I mean, I can't even remember how big RevProc was. It was over 100 pages, I believe, so amazing.
It's the impact of AI, the overused Hemingway quote, it's happening gradually and suddenly, and it's sudden right now, Mark, the capabilities that are being rolled out. But with the tax area, like the other areas, you're going to have to, and I'm hearing this feedback, you have to rethink the workflow, how you're going to be, doing that tax planning, servicing your clients related to it. All kinds of questions from billing to business model to the tax research.
We've been promoting this for 20 plus years. The fact that in tax is mining the 1040 for gold, right? Is we have all this information in front of us. We have that data. Now how do we talk to our client about it differently to really get them thinking about themselves and their business differently?
Well, Mark, you mentioned a little bit about this earlier. This is a slide from 2020. Mark Koziel and I, during the pandemic, we launched the town hall with many others, Lisa Simpson, others from the DC office here. And this slide we regularly leveraged. And last night we were fortunate to have dinner with Michael Faulkender, who's the former Deputy Secretary of Treasury, and he was the Assistant Secretary of Treasury back in 2020, and he was the architect of the PPP program. And we talked about the public-private partnership, and we really worked together. And I'll tell you, that's why we now have we built this up now to 15,000 regular listeners every couple of weeks. But Mark, we're navigating change here. There is all kinds of adversity in the marketplace at times. But we talked about it last night, how important it is for us all to continue to work together. And it's something we got to think more about with whatever administration is in place.
Yeah, a couple of our friends that joined us last night with Mike were encouraged by what they had heard based on some of the IRS changes that are happening now. They are thinking of this public-private partnership where we could rebuild the IRS and modernize the IRS differently. The SEC conference this morning, Chairman Atkins spoke right after I did. The chief accountant, Kurt Hall, spoke right after the chairman did. Kurt and I spent some time after the fact. We're getting Kurt more involved to meet up with some additional firms. I've gotten feedback from firm CEOs who have been invited to the SEC because they want their perspective. I just think we're at a really good time right now to try and open the capital market and provide opportunities, but we have to hold on to quality, number one, and make sure that we stay the trusted profession around all of it as we go forward.
So this is an ecosystem, and how do you manage all of this complexity? How do you manage, thinking through all these different solutions? What I want to do, and this is a slide that you've been seeing around the conference, the ecosystem has never been more important. A few years back, I remember having one of the big four CEOs said, partnering is a core competency. And this community of tech companies, a few years back, many years back, times people would call them vendors. They're not vendors, they're partners. We hold these very inclusive meetings, these executive roundtables, we bring them all together. They help us see with a much wider lens. They identify opportunities, and when they talk to us about how they're seeing the transformation of the practice areas. So we work very closely with them. So Mark, I just want to thank this ecosystem.
Yeah, a round of applause to all the tech companies who are here. And a number of them have attended. You host a tech roundtable every year. It's one of my favorite meetings. And just to listen to, and this is the thing, because AI is out there doesn't mean that each and every one of you have to figure out how to build AI and get that integrated into your process. A lot of these companies are figuring that out. And so now it's going to be a part of your tech stack, and it's going to be part of your analysis process as you go forward. So it's great. Since 2012, having this community, having this access to technology companies, it's just fantastic.
And we keep expanding it. This year it's 40. Next year we'll take it to 60. Give us the input on who else you want here, and we're very open. They are partners, so really appreciate their support. Mark, we got a couple final slides here. This slide has a lot of boxes on it. It highlights there's billions. Here over 25 billion. And growing every day, being invested in the firms, billions being invested by these technology solutions to transform the practice of finance and accounting. One thing I'll tell you, I talked to some of the PE firms. The thesis that they have related to the firms is basically the thesis of digital CPA. It's about advancing the people, the process, the technology, and looking to add value. With that said, Mark, there's questions out there about how we manage this and what safeguards are in place.
Yeah, and we continue to look at that. So you see the bottom right talking about independence, conflict of interest, and the like. The professional ethics executive committee is looking at this. We're expecting, I think within a week, an exposure draft, kind of final on feedback of some questions they had out there, that by the end of the year, this year, with a very short window for response, only because we need to keep it moving, is any changes we make in independence regarding, it's not just about APS, it's,
right.
Or from private equity. Everybody wants to automatically make it private equity, which, by the way, I always say I have no opinion on private equity. There's a lot of capital that's entered the market, whether you went ESOP, wealth management firms, family office companies that are buying into firms. There's been a lot of different things. Not to mention over 20 years, we've had a public company, or we had a couple public companies, down to one now at this point. So we've had the alternative practice structure around, but with the private equity, wealth management firms, it does change the game a little bit. And so we have to make sure that we stay on top of that.
Yeah, and with that said, I mean, they're in the marketplace to drive value and growth in solutions. So it's something that here, at Digital CPA and CPA.com, we're also thinking about how we can, better understand it from a practice development standpoint. So here, it's a slide that we use in a lot of town halls, covers a lot of topics. Mark, I know there was a couple that you wanted to hit on.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, tax, we kind of talked about it now. The administration is working on implementation, losing 40 days along the way, and the shutdown didn't help as much, but they were still working on some of the implementation. It was dribbles and drabs at that point. Now they're going to kick it up a little bit. The fortunate thing is we have a shorter window than what we had for TCJA back in 17, but there shouldn't be as much uplift because a lot of them were really kind of extenders from where we were before. So that, the current state of the administration, I talked about the IRS a little bit, talked about the SEC. The SEC wants to open the capital markets. This is on their agenda. They want to make sure that we're going to have the support in the audit firms to be able to support that, but they want to drive the capital market process. So we are active in that. And then finally, this profession reform, mobility, and deregulation are all big ticket items that, basically as I came in, and by the way, it was last year, this was the first stage I was on as new CEO to start January 1st. And by then, Ohio had already passed, or just about to pass, adding the Bachelor's Plus 2 into the ecosystem around being able to sit for the CPA exam and becoming a CPA. And so now we're at 25 states. And, so I started in January. It gets signed on January 9th in Ohio. A bunch of states were already getting ready to introduce, and the train had left the station. Our biggest challenge right now is around mobility, because mobility was broken the second that happened in Ohio, and so it causes a lot of challenges. And firms are starting to find out the hard way right now that it is causing those challenges, and we're working with some tech companies looking at different options around that. At the same time as we're doing that, you have Florida last January introduced proposed legislation to basically deregulate us and other professions, architects, engineers, and the like. And Mark Peterson from our DC team, he's like, yeah, in Florida, they're going to deregulate architects and engineers, and they have condos falling into the ocean. So maybe not a good time for that. But it's the same with the accounting profession. We were able to help defeat that getting passed, but we knew full well then, because the House Speaker who was on his agenda is a 2-year term, and he still is the House Speaker now, and has already introduced for the January session legislation around trying to deregulate, to eliminate the State Board of Accountancy. They're talking about keeping CPE in on this current method, but the Florida Institute of CPAs, this is why you continue to pay your state society dues in addition to our dues, that they went in there, and within 18 hours, they had 150 CPAs in Florida up on the Hill talking about why this is a bad bill. In fact, they were so timely on it, half the legislators didn't even know that it had dropped already, or it was about to drop as a pre-file, that what they're going to see for January. So really, fantastic work. Our team in DC is working hand in hand with Florida, but Florida has to lead the way on that. That's not something you can come in nationally and say, hey, we don't like this bill you're doing in your state. So those are kind of the big ticket items.
And Mark, one thing that is, we're clearly changing every day is the talent situation based on the ongoing evolution of AI. There's Jen Leary tomorrow is going to be talking about this MIT study that came out, and clearly there's changes in talent for all sectors of the economy, and professional services is one. So that's another element that will come into play as you're looking at what your people strategy is for the 2026 and beyond.
Totally. I mean, are we going to need the same number of people in how we do business today as we did 20, 30, 40 years ago? I was talking to a retired auditor who said that they used to have a room full of footers, right? They had, 40 auditors sitting in a room just footing schedules all day, every day. Well, we don't have that anymore like we used to. We have upped the game on what we do. And so when you think about AI and AI trust and AI assurance, there's going to be a whole new market that's created on our benefit to be able to do things differently. So I still think, it's still the greatest profession in the world, absolutely will be, and there's going to be CPAs, there's going to be firms for a very long time.
Yeah, there's just, they want some, I'll tell you, just at a Broadway, there's so much complexity. They want someone else to run the machines, to take all these capabilities and help them, drive their small business or mid-sized businesses forward. So Mark, it's been great doing today's keynote with you. I can tell you how passionate we are at CPA.com, working closely with the AICPA on the transformation of the practice areas. But it's really this community. This community is leading the way. We learn from them. So big thanks to you. And big thanks to the digital CPA audience.
Yeah, and Eric, thank you and the team for putting this together. I remember the early days in 2012 where, we were in a ballroom a fraction of this size, and it just has grown, and the interest around this and really driving the profession from a technology standpoint. We are thriving and driving, and CPA.com's done a lot to help that.